For almost 10 years, I thought I just needed to lose that last 10 pounds. But no matter how much I dieted, tracked, or pushed myself, I never looked or felt the way that I wanted to. What I didn't realize at the time was that constantly chasing weight loss wasn't the answer. In this video, I'm going to be sharing the 10 biggest mistakes that I made on my journey and what finally helped me get lean, feel stronger, and actually like what I see in the mirror. Whether you're just starting out or you're stuck in the same cycle that I was, I promise that you're going to walk away from this video with more clarity about how to achieve your own dream body. Let's start with the mistake that I believe kept me stuck the longest, and I know it's a mistake that so many people are still making. For years, I truly believed that the only way to achieve my dream body was just to keep going harder. Larger calorie deficits, more cardio, and more discipline. I believed that the more aggressive I was, the faster I would get results. But what actually happened was the opposite. I wasn't just eating in a deficit, I was completely underfueling myself. I was eating very little Monday through Thursday, and I would see the scale drop, and I'd be like, yes, this is finally working. But by the time Friday rolled around, I was absolutely starving. So I would start snacking, I would lose all control over the weekend, and then by Monday, my weight was right back where I started. So what did I do? Naturally, I pushed harder. I would cut my calories even more, I would do more cardio at the gym, and I would just try to out-discipline all of my cravings. And sadly for me, and like so many others that I've worked with, that cycle just kept repeating itself. Restrict, binge, guilt, repeat. My weight was constantly fluctuating up and down. I felt very little control when I was around food. And I think the worst part about all of it was that I was feeling like I was doing so much work, but I never felt any closer to the body that I wanted. So now that I'm looking back on all this, I see that the problem really wasn't that I was trying to diet, it was how aggressively I was doing it. I didn't understand that sustainable fat loss doesn't come from you just trying to white knuckle your way through the lowest calorie count possible. And to be honest, I don't even think I had any concept of what sustainable fat loss was. Now I know that I did not need more willpower, I needed a smarter approach. I needed to be eating enough food to support my training, continue to build muscle mass, and fuel myself properly while still being in a deficit. It also taught me a huge lesson for myself and my clients that I would be having in the future, that sometimes lowering your calories is not the answer, especially when you're having trouble adhering to the current calorie count you already have established for yourself. Now my rule for myself and my clients is that the goal is to always eat as much food as you can while still being on par to reach your goal. So the first mistake that I made was how aggressively I was going into these deficits. But the next mistake is what I was doing during those deficits that made things even worse. So once I convinced myself that eating less was the answer, I of course doubled down on another classic move, more cardio. I figured if I could just burn more calories, I would be able to shrink myself into the body that I wanted. I kind of secretly did P90X in my bedroom. I would run miles and miles on the treadmill in our basement. Of course, I did all of this with a hoodie on too because I thought sweating meant more fat loss. But basically, I was just the queen of everything high intensity and cardio. And honestly, guys, nothing changed with my body. I wasn't lean, I was just kind of soft, and I definitely was not strong by any means. What I didn't realize at the time was that looking toned, that lean, sculpted look that I thought came from weight loss, actually came from building muscle. And at this point in my life, I had not spent nearly enough time building any. I first needed to actually build the thing that I was trying to uncover. And once I started lifting seriously and prioritizing progressive overload and not just burning calories in the gym, I finally started to see the physical changes that I wanted. But even once I started strength training, I still didn't fully get it. I kept bouncing from plan to plan, and I never gave any of them the chance to actually work. So mistake number 3 was thinking that I can outwork a lack of structure, especially in my training. I didn't track my workouts, I didn't understand progressive overload, and when it came to my strength training workouts, I was just kind of doing something random at the gym every time I would go. I would go to the gym and I was still starting my workouts off with like 30 to 45 minutes of pretty intense cardio, and then when it came to my strength exercises, I would just kind of choose a few that I liked, or maybe I would do something that I saw someone do on Instagram, and then I'd really just call it a day. So there was little to no structure, and it showed because I was just not making progress at all when it came to lifting. And again, the worst part is that I felt that I was working really, really hard. I was sweating, I was tired, I was showing up every day to the gym, so I just thought that meant I was making progress. But showing up and working hard isn't always enough, especially when you have some major muscle building or strength building goals. What finally changed everything for me was when I started following a proper strength workout and I actually started tracking my workouts. I started focusing on getting stronger in my key lifts. I would repeat movements consistently from week to week instead of changing them every single workout that I did, and I just really gave myself the time to actually make progress. Once I had more structure with my workouts, especially my strength training workouts, I was actually able to build the muscle that I needed to create the body that I wanted. So my workouts eventually started to feel much more purposeful, but I was still making that same mistake with my nutrition, which is where mistake number 4 comes in. Mistake number 4 was specifically tracking my food as I ate it and still thinking that I could hit my goals without any preparation. At first, it felt really flexible for me. Like, I'll just make smart choices throughout the day, I'll track it in MyFitnessPal, and I'll just make it all kind of work out. But in reality, it was so chaotic, and it actually felt the opposite of flexible. Some days I would get to dinner and realize I had 50, 60 grams of protein left and hardly any calories. Other days, I would forget to track until the end of the night and then realize I went way over. I really didn't have a plan. I was just kind of reacting to my hunger, my cravings, my mood, and whatever was around. And that made it so incredibly tough to stay consistent. The real turning point for me was actually one of my most recent intentional fat loss phases. I stopped trying to make food decisions in the moment, and I just started planning a little bit ahead. I would build out my grocery list each week with actual meals in mind so that I knew I could quickly throw a balanced meal together. Then I'd also prep a few key items, usually the protein or any of the food items that I bought that take longer to cook. And seriously, all I did was just pre-log most of my meals the night before. That way I knew exactly what my next day looked like, and I wasn't scrambling to try to fit things in. It took some very minimal upfront effort, but honestly, it made everything feel so much easier in the long run. I didn't have to overthink every meal anymore. I was able to stay way more consistent, and I stopped reaching for snacks or ordering out because I didn't have anything to eat. All right, quick pause. If you're realizing that you might need more structure in your own workouts or nutrition, I just released my brand new Strong and Lean Foundations 6-week training program. This is a 6-week resistance training program designed to help you build muscle and get stronger, and it's super beginner friendly and very easy to follow. And for the first 100 people that take advantage of this offer, you're going to receive 2 free bonuses. The first bonus is my flexible dieting guide, which is going to teach you exactly how to reach your goals without giving up the foods that you love. The second is my high protein recipe book, which comes with breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack ideas that are both nutritious and really yummy and are going to help get you started on your journey. This is literally everything that I wish I had when I was first starting out 10 years ago. If you're interested, I'm going to drop the link for that in the description below. Okay, back to the video. So once I stopped winging it with food and started planning ahead, everything felt so much more manageable. But even with a more solid plan, I did still have one sneaky habit that kept pulling me off track. Mistake number 5 was believing that if I messed up, the whole entire day was ruined. If I ate something off plan, or I had more calories than I intended to have, or if I missed a workout, then I would seriously convince myself that the whole day was ruined and I might as well just start fresh tomorrow. And then kind of like I mentioned earlier, that would spiral into overeating, feeling guilty, and then having to restrict again the next day. I was constantly swinging between on and off instead of just being consistent, and it was honestly so hard for me to get off that hamster wheel. That one decision to mentally check out did way more damage than one cookie or one latte could have ever done to me. Because guys, fat loss is seriously just a math equation. If you consume more energy than your body burns, you will either maintain your weight or gain weight. And my very poor mindset around food turned a 200-calorie cookie into a 600-calorie shame-filled snack fest. Pretty much any way that I sliced it, whether I looked at it from a calorie perspective or I looked at it from the angle of like, how will this make me feel emotionally and physically, my all or nothing mindset did not make any sense, and it was not benefiting me. So I started to very slowly retrain my brain by kind of letting go of that clean slate mentality that I was holding for so long. And that shift in my mindset made it so much easier for me to eventually stay more consistent and made the whole process way less stressful. So mistake number 6 was a huge one for me, and it's something that I struggled with from like age 19 to about 25, and it's something I still see a lot of people and my own clients struggle with. And that mistake is treating weekends entirely different than weekdays, especially when it comes to food and alcohol. During the week, I was much more disciplined. I would always hit my workouts, I tracked my food, and I was still able to maintain some sort of calorie deficit by the end of the day. But then the weekend would roll around and it was like a completely different mindset. I'd skip meals during the day to save calories for going out. I would always end up drinking way more than I intended to. And then once I was drunk or tipsy, all of my inhibitions would go out the window and I would be, devouring pizza and wings and all that good stuff. And I know this seems counterintuitive because it is, but that would usually lead to more off-plan eating because I already felt so bad about what I did say on like Friday night that I'm like, you know what? Might as well keep this going. I don't want to feel these emotions. I'm just going to start fresh on Monday. I didn't realize how much damage that pattern was doing to my progress and, more importantly, my relationship with food. Eventually, I did stop pretending that weekends didn't count. I didn't cut out alcohol completely, but I definitely started being more intentional about it, especially during an intentional fat loss phase. I stopped skipping meals on the weekend, and I just made sure I had more satisfying food around, and I treated my weekends the same way that I treat my weekdays. I just gave myself a little bit more flexibility. And honestly, I was able to enjoy my weekends so much more when it didn't feel like they were a reset button. So cleaning up my weekends and breaking that cycle definitely was a huge improvement for me. But still at that point, I didn't really understand what it meant to take a long-term approach to reach my goals. Because even when I was being consistent, I was terrified of slowing that progress down, which is actually what leads us to mistake number 7. Mistake number 7 is actually something that I didn't even realize I was doing until I burned out from it completely. And that mistake was avoiding maintenance phases because I thought that if I wasn't dieting, that I was losing progress. At the beginning of 2020, or more specifically, right when COVID happened, I actually had a really successful cut. I spent about 3 months in a really sustainable calorie deficit, and I actually saw really positive changes with my body that I was really happy about. But instead of transitioning into maintenance, which I really didn't know was even a thing at the time, I just kept that diet going. So what started as a successful 3-month diet turned into 8 months of chronic dieting. I actually started gaining some of the weight back that I had lost. My hunger was all over the place, and I just had zero motivation or energy at this point. At the time, I really didn't understand what was happening. I thought there was something wrong with me and that I was just losing my willpower, but really I was experiencing full-on diet fatigue. And what I didn't know at the time is that this is literally what maintenance periods are made for. Maintenance isn't about doing nothing, which is what I used to believe. They're a chance to restore your body, stabilize your hunger cues, and actually protect all the progress that you just made. After that, when I would enter back into an intentional cutting phase, it was way shorter, more focused, and it was way more successful because I took that break from being in a deficit and my body was actually ready for it. But even with this shift in my mindset, I still found myself in a bit of a rut throughout the last couple years when it came to fat loss. Mistake number 8 was that I kept trying to diet during times in my life when I really wasn't in a good place to do it, and it made everything feel significantly harder. I've gone into fat loss phases before when I was just juggling way too much. I was overwhelmed with work and stress from owning my own business. I wasn't getting enough sleep on a regular basis, and I was living in a place where I didn't have much control over my food environment, aka I was living with my parents. There have been times over the last 3 years when I did want to lose some body fat, and I would just say to myself, now's the time, just push through, you got this. And what would happen? I would struggle to stay on track, feel defeated, and I would end up quitting. It wasn't until my most recent cut that things finally started to click. I had just closed my in-person training business after 4.5 years. I just moved in with my boyfriend, and life actually felt like it was starting to slow down a bit. For the first time in a long time, I actually had the mental capacity and the routine and the energy to give this cut the attention that it needed. And it felt easier than it ever had before. It's not about just choosing the right calories or the right workouts. It's also about choosing the right season. And no, there's never going to be a perfect time to do this, but I do think there are going to be better times to do it. It would be like trying to start a strict fat loss phase in November during one of the busiest times of the year and right before the holidays, which I have had clients request before. Technically, sure, you can do it, but why would you make it harder than it has to be? If your life is absolute chaos and you're stretched really thin right now, it's totally fine to just focus on maintenance and establishing healthy habits. Speaking of healthy habits, let's talk about mistake number 9. Mistake number 9 was something that took me a really long time to notice and even longer to do something about. I'm actually still actively working on this one. That's how recent this development is. I kept brushing off emotional eating as just a bad day or something that I just needed to have more willpower about, when really I needed more awareness and a better plan. For a while, I thought of emotional eating as simply kind of, sitting on your couch crying into a tub of ice cream. But for me, it was way sneakier than that. It was walking into the kitchen when I felt overwhelmed, grabbing a handful of snacks when I felt stressed out or tired or just needed a little dopamine hit, eating because I was bored or anxious or I was trying to avoid a certain emotion or doing something that I didn't really enjoy doing. I'm at the point now where I don't think of foods as good or bad, so I'm totally fine with a little sweet treat here and there. But I realized I was eating at times when I wasn't even hungry, and that made me think, Okay, Savannah, we have something to unpack here. Something that helped me a lot was creating more structure and routine around food, especially during stressful times. I started pre-planning my meals a bit more intentionally. I would have some go-to options when my energy was low and I knew I wasn't gonna feel like cooking. And I also just started to have more open conversation with myself, asking myself questions like, are you actually hungry? And if the answer is no, then what do you actually need right now? Maybe it's a nap, maybe it's a phone call with my sister, maybe it's a walk around the block. This is something that I work a lot with clients on as well, but my best advice for you, if this is something that you're also struggling with, is to not say no to the food that you want, but just to say not right now. Emotional hunger often feels really urgent, where physical hunger is a lot more gradual. You gradually become more hungry throughout the day. It's never an emergency. So giving yourself time to just pause for maybe 5 to 10 minutes before you actually allow yourself to eat that food can be really helpful to kind of let those emotions pass and that urgency reduce. So once I stopped relying solely on willpower and actually started building routines that would help me through my hardest days, I started to feel a lot more in control. But there was still one final mistake, and I think it is one of the most important for you to hear. Mistake number 10 is probably the one that would have saved me the most frustration had I understood it sooner, and that is understanding how long this journey would actually take. I thought I was just 10 pounds away from feeling like my most confident self in my body. I figured I just needed a few solid weeks of discipline and a calorie deficit and I'd be set. But the truth is obviously that I wasn't just 10 pounds away from my dream body. I was 10 years away from building the muscle, the habits, and the mindset that I needed to maintain it. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't making progress along the way, because I absolutely was. But every time I expected to be done in 8 to 12 weeks, I was setting myself up for disappointment. This wasn't just a 3-month transformation. It was pretty much like a 10-year evolution, and that's just gonna keep going. And that is not what a lot of people want to hear. Now, obviously, it might not take you 10 years, but accepting that this was going to take more time than I originally thought is what freed me from feeling like I have to be perfect all the time. And the funny thing is that once I stopped rushing the process, I actually started to make more progress, because I wasn't just consistent for a few weeks. I've been consistent for months and years now, and that is what it takes. So if you're in the middle of your journey right now and you're like, this is taking forever, I hope that this reminds you that you're not doing anything wrong. This is just something that takes time. And if you can give yourself the patience and consistency that this process really deserves, you will also get there without burning yourself out along the way. And if this is a topic that you want to go even deeper on, especially how long it takes to build muscle and lose body fat, then I want you guys to check out this video right here. In this video, I break down the exact nutrition strategies that work, how to fit them into your life, and how to set realistic expectations on your journey. I hope that this video helped you guys out, and I will see you guys on the next one.